for over 3,000 years. Few looking upon the tower would guess that at its heart it had been both broken and corrupted, separately. The wind blew, passing through a city that seemed more a work of art than a workaday capital. Each building was a marvel. Even the simple granite shop fronts had been crafted by meticulous ogier hands to evoke wonder and beauty. Here a dome hinted at the form of a rising sun. There a fountain sprang from the top of a building itself, cresting what appeared to be two waves crashing together. On one cobbled street, a pair of steep, three-story buildings stood opposite one another, each crafted into the form of a maiden. The marble creations, half statue, half dwelling, reached with stone hands toward one another as if in greeting, hair billowing behind, immobile, yet carved with such delicacy that every strand seemed to undulate in the wind's passing. The streets themselves were far less grand. Oh, they had been laid out with care, radiating from the white tower like streaks of sunlight. Yet that sunlight was dimmed by refuse and clutter, hints at the crowding the siege had caused. And perhaps the crowding wasn't the only reason for the disrepair. The storefront signs and awnings hadn't seen wash or polish in far too long. Rotting garbage piled where it had been dumped in alleys, drawing flies and rats, but driving away all others. Dangerous toughs lounged on the street corners. Once, they'd never dared do that, and certainly not with such arrogance. Where was the White Tower, the law? Young fools laughed, saying that the city's troubles were the fault of the siege, and that things would settle down once the rebels were quelled. Older men shook their gray-streaked heads and muttered that things had never been this bad, even when the savage Aiel had besieged Tarvalon some 20 years previously. Merchants ignored both young and old. They had their own problems, mainly on South Harbor, where trade into the city by way of river had nearly come to a halt. Thick-chested workers toiled beneath the eyes of an Aes Sedai wearing a red-fringed shawl. She used the one power to remove wards and weaken the stone, while workmen broke the rock apart and hauled it away. The workmen had sleeves rolled up, exposing curls of dark hair along burly arms as they swung pick or hammer, pounding at the ancient stones. They dripped sweat onto the rock and into the water below as they dug at the roots of the chain that blocked passage into the city by river. Half of that chain was now indestructible Coendiar, called Heartstone by some. The effort to tear it free and allow passage into the city was an exhausting one. The harbor stoneworks, magnificent and strong, shaped by the power itself, were only one of the more visible casualties in the silent war between the rebel Aes Sedai and those who held the tower. The wind blew through the harbor, where idling porters stood watching the workers chip the stones away one by one, sending flakes of gray-white dust to float on the water. Those with too much sense, or perhaps too little, whispered that such portents could only mean one thing. Tarmangaiden, the last battle, must quickly be approaching. And there it is, the Wheel of Time. It continues to turn. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the Wheel of Time, though the book series will eventually end. Here's your book back. If you want me to write that I read from this copy when you get it signed, I'm happy to do so. Some people like that, some people don't care. It's really just up to you. All right, so question and answer. You guys, oh, there's someone very excited in the back. Okay, go ahead, we'll go with you first.
On your website, it said that when you first got hired, it was to do a memory of like just
Yes.
as a single volume. And due to your labor of love, you realized that it couldn't be done justice there, and you said that wasn't due to your existing contract with Tor. So has that been updated?
The question is, yeah, in the original, if you're wondering why the book is 3 instead of 1, there is an explanation on my website. And part of that reason was that Jim handed me an outline that was for what I determined to be a 2,500-page book. He'd been promising people for many years that he would write it as one book, but it would be so big that you would have to it would have to be sold with a cart to get it out of the bookstore. You can actually find that quote online. He said it at Dragon Con, I believe.
He said it here.
He said it here?
He said it
told
here.
you here.
Yeah.
They're going to have to sell a cart. Invent a new form of binding was one of his favorite things to say. And I determined when I was working on this book, pretty early on, I realized that I had one of two choices. Either I had to write it short enough that it could be published as one volume, to get in one book, or I could write it as the outline and the length and the characters as the characters demanded, and the publisher was going to split it. I knew this. I knew the publishing industry. I knew that I would lose a battle to try and get them to publish a 2,500-page book. Robert Jordan may have won that battle. I don't think that he would have either. But those were the decisions I was faced with, and I decided I was going to write a 2,500-page book, and I was going to let Tor have to decide to split it. When they did split it, Harriet very nicely, even though she didn't have to, offered me a contract on the other two. And so I have been signed to all 3 books, though I had already told her I took this project on, I'm going to write it. And so I spent many months writing a book that I had no contract for, but there was really no question in her mind that she was going to do that. But yeah, anyway, all right, question here.
Which book are you going to tell us who killed Asmodean? Doing us Alcatraz style afterward.
I'm glad we got this one out of the way. Get some of those bumper stickers to the bookstore employees because they wanted some. I was actually asked this at JordanCon, was I not? I believe I was. They made the mistake of asking it of me when Harriet was sitting next to me. And I was leaning forward to answer, and Harriet reached in front of me and took the microphone and said, "Read and find out." She said it gleefully. And so, since she said that, I feel that I can't answer. It will be in one of the 3 books. I do know, for those who haven't realized, he did leave a note. In fact, it's actually a handwritten note attached to a piece of paper that says, "Who killed Asmodean?" And what's that? And yeah, my usual answer to who killed Asmodean is Robert Jordan. You know, Bella is also a favorite answer, as is Nard. All right, next question. In the way back. What is the timeline for the remaining 2 books? I am about 70% of the way through Towers of Midnight, which is the second one. I actually wrote about 500 words on the plane ride here from Utah. I'm feeling the pressure and the deadline on this one. I'm feeling that we will have it by this time next year. I'm feeling very good about that because I have so much of it